2026. And honestly, if you've been glued to the newswire for the South Bay for, say, the last 12 to 24 hours, you might be feeling a little bit of whiplash.
Oh, 100%. It's been a split screen kind of morning. I don't think I've seen a news cycle this polarized in a long time.
That is exactly what it feels like. A split screen. It's like looking at two completely different economies operating in the same zip codes, maybe even on the same block.
Right next to each other.
Exactly. On one side, you've got these, massive billion-dollar defense expansions. You've got wealth management firms that are just sprinting to double their size.
Yep. Boom times.
Total boom times. And then you flip to the other side of the screen and you have these iconic burger chains brands we see everywhere here filing for bankruptcy protection before the sun even came up.
It's a classic case of those big macroeconomic shifts finally hitting the pavement, locally. We're seeing this simultaneous boom in hard tech and infrastructure and a really painful, messy restructuring in consumer services.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to take this stack of breaking news from the last 12 hours, and it is a thick stack, and really peel back the layers. We'll figure out who's winning, who's hurting, and why.
And more importantly, the strategy piece.
Yes, the strategy piece. Because whether you're booming or busting, the narrative you put out there matters. We're going to look at how brand amplification, specifically with tools like Voxel Micro Video Labs, could actually change the story for these companies.
Right. Because in this environment, with this much noise, controlling the story is almost as important as controlling the balance sheet.
Yeah.
If you lose the narrative, you really do lose the game.
Absolutely. So we're talking about Space Booch getting $1 billion upgrade, a Torrance financial giant flexing its muscles, but we have to start with the big one, the boom.
The boom.
Late last night, and then confirmed this morning by the Los Angeles Business Journal, Anduril Industries dropped what I can only describe as a bombshell. They're moving forward with a huge expansion in Long Beach.
And huge is not hyperbole here. We are talking about a $1 billion investment.
$1 billion. With a B.
Correct. Yeah. They're building a new 1.18 million square foot campus. It actually spans both Long Beach and Lakewood.
And the headline number, the one that everyone is texting about this morning, is the jobs.
Oh, yeah. Approximately 5,500 direct jobs are expected.
5,500 jobs, that is. That's like dropping a small town right into the middle of Long Beach. But I want to pause on the type of jobs here for a second.
Good point.
Because, when we hear tech expansion in 2026, we think, what, software engineers coding in a dark room?
Right, but this is hardware tech. This is Anduril. They're not building a social media app. They're building autonomous underwater vehicles, defense systems, drones.
So it's not just coders.
Not at all. You need welders. You need aerospace engineers. You need machinists who can work with high-grade titanium. You need people who know how to build physical things that, fly and swim.
Which is why Long Beach is kind of the cheat code here, isn't it?
Exactly. You're tapping into that multi-generational DNA of the region. This is where they built the Douglas aircraft, the Boeing C-17s. That talent pool for building complex, heavy machinery is already there. It's just embedded in the soil, waiting to be reactivated.
It's legacy talent.
That's the strategic layer under the billion-dollar headline. It's not just about cheap land. It's about the people who are already there.
For years, people have been trying to make the nickname Space Beach happen for Long Beach. And it always felt a little bit like a marketing slogan.
A Chamber of Commerce thing.
Yeah, but when you see $1 billion hitting the ground, it suddenly feels very real.
It has definitely moved beyond a slogan. This is tangible infrastructure. And if you connect this to the bigger picture, it really reinforces California's leadership in aerospace and defense. Mm-hmm. We've seen other companies lead the state, chasing tax breaks in Texas or wherever. But Anduril doubling down here, that's an economic anchor. It supports innovation, it demands workforce development, and it creates this ripple effect.
Okay, but here's the challenge I see. You need to hire 5,500 people, and not just any people, highly specialized talent. That is a talent war. You're fighting SpaceX, you're fighting Northrop, you're fighting every other tech giant for best brains.
That is the bottleneck. The capital is the easy part. The talent is hard.
So if I'm in the C-suite at Anduril this morning, I'm thinking, how do I win that war? And this is where we have to talk about brand amplification. I was looking at Voxel Micro Video Labs earlier, specifically their tech and innovation specialty page, and I kept thinking, this is the playbook.
Because they aren't just selling defense tech to the government anymore. At this scale, they are selling a vision to potential employees.
Exactly. They have to position themselves as the place to be. If they use Voxel's creator support hub right there in the South Bay, they could broadcast recruitment efforts that look and feel completely different. A standard job post on LinkedIn isn't going to cut it for the top 1% of engineers.
So instead of just a text description saying, we need a senior engineer, what are you picturing?
Show me behind the scenes. Show me the innovation stories. You're building the future of defense. Make it look like it. They could use that studio to create content that highlights the really specific hard engineering challenges they're solving.
Get the lead engineer on camera talking about the aerodynamics of a new drone.
Yes. You have to win the narrative that you are the most exciting place to work in 2026. You appeal to the engineer's desire to solve tough problems.
Just like that. It turns recruitment into content marketing.
Yeah.
Makes them feel like they're missing out if they aren't there.
Precisely. Okay, so sticking with that theme of growth, let's pivot to the second big story, the sprint.
The sprint.
We're shifting focus just a bit east to Torrance. The LA Business Journal also reported today on EP Wealth Advisors. Now, this is a story that might fly under the radar if you aren't a finance nerd, but it is significant.
It's huge.
They've hit a major growth milestone. EP Wealth has more than doubled its assets under management, or AUM, in just 2 years.
And just to clarify for everyone, doubling your AUM in 2 years is incredibly difficult. That is aggressive, almost violent growth in the financial world.
It's a quiet giant in our own backyard. They're calling it a sprint to growth. But help us understand the why here. The economy has been, well, weird for 2 years. Inflation, interest rates, it's been choppy. So why is a wealth management firm in Torrance exploding right now?
It's actually because the economy is weird. When markets are easy and everything is going up, everyone thinks they can manage their own money. I'll just buy an index fund.
Right.
But when things get complex, tax changes, volatility, estate planning people run to safety. They run to advice. This signals that there's a lot of capital in the South Bay just looking for a steady hand. And EP Wealth has successfully positioned itself as the steward of that capital.
Okay, so fear drives people to experts. That makes sense. But growth creates noise, right? When you get that big, that fast, you risk losing the very thing that made you successful. You risk becoming just another corporate monolith.
And trust is the currency of finance. If your clients feel like they're just a number in a database because you doubled in size, they leave.
So this brings us to the strategy piece again. I was looking at Voxel's accounting and tax professionals sector, which covers financial services, and there's a massive opportunity here to mitigate that risk.
For EP Wealth, you mean?
Yes. They aren't just a growing company anymore. They're a dominant player. If I were advising them, I'd be saying, you need to humanize this beast immediately. They could use Voxel's Momentum Builder Studio to host deep dive discussions on the market trends that are actually driving their growth.
I see. So instead of just putting out a press release saying, hey, we're big now, you explain why you're big.
Exactly. You transform your advisors into thought leaders. If you have your top experts on video clearly explaining the complex tax landscape of 2026 or the investment shifts we're seeing, you stop being just a wealth manager and you become the premier authority.
Authority creates trust.
And trust keeps that AUM growing. It validates the sprint. It tells the market, we grew this fast because we know something you don't.
And it keeps that personal connection alive, even at scale. I get it.
Precisely. Okay, so we've had the boom in Long Beach. We've had the sprint in Torrance. Now, unfortunately, we have to talk about the pain.
This is the tough part of the morning news cycle.
Early this morning, we're talking pre-dawn hours, FIT Brands, Inc. filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection.
And for anyone listening who doesn't know that corporate name, FAT Brands is the parent company of Fatburger, Johnny Rockets, Round Table Pizza, and about 15 other concepts.
These are absolute staples. I feel like there's a Fatburger or a Round Table at every major intersection in the South Bay. This isn't some obscure firm. This is where we eat lunch.
Yeah, there are over 2,200 locations worldwide, but the local footprint here is really heavy.
So what happened? I mean, whenever I drive by a Fatburger, there's a line, are people not buying burgers?
No, people are buying burgers. The restaurants themselves are actually operationally profitable. They make money selling food. The problem is, up at the top, the corporate debt structure. The filing says the goal is to deleverage the balance sheet. So basically, they borrowed way too much money to buy all these different brands back when money was cheap.
And now it's not.
Now interest rates are higher, the debt is coming due, and they can't pay it back with the cash on hand.
So the engine is fine, but the car has a massive lean on it.
That's a perfect way to put it. Now, the CEO is claiming resilience. He says operations, the actual restaurants, are expected to stay open. The stock will keep trading, just with a Q on the end of the ticker to show it's in bankruptcy.
But hold on, Chapter 11 is serious. You can spin it as restructuring, but if I'm a regular person and I hear bankruptcy, I assume the doors are about to be locked.
And that is the danger. It creates this massive cloud of uncertainty. But think about the franchisees. So many of these locations are owned by local small business owners here in Torrance, Redondo, Hawthorne. They paid the franchise fee, they bought the equipment, they hired the staff.
They must be panicking. They're just innocent bystanders in a corporate finance disaster.
Absolutely. And the employees, too. Over 45,000 system-wide. It really highlights the struggle of that franchise model in this kind of interest rate environment.
It's just wild to see that contrast. Anduril is hiring 5,500 people, and the burger joint down the street is fighting for its life. But, before we get too depressed, I do want to throw in one tiny glimmer of hope for the food scene.
Please do. We need it.
While the big chains are struggling with debt, there was a thread blowing up on Reddit locally about Zankou chicken finally coming to the South Bay.
The cult favorite. Garlic sauce for everyone.
Yes, Lawndale area, Hawthorne Boulevard, and people are going nuts for it. It just goes to show you specific brands with a loyal following, they still have momentum, even if the sector is hurting.
That's a really important distinction. The fast casual sector might be in trouble because of macroeconomics, but quality still sells. If the product is undeniable, people will show up.
But back to F8 brands. They are in a full-blown crisis. Bankruptcy controls the legal narrative in court, but they desperately need to control the public narrative on the street.
They do. Because if customers think Chapter 11 means closed, they stop showing up. And that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Then the stores do close.
This is where I think Voxel's small business specialty approach is critical, just scaled way up. F8 Brands needs to reassure everyone, and immediately. If I were them, I would not be hiding behind press releases.
What's the play? How do they execute that?
They could use Voxel to create authoritative, plain English content explaining the restructuring, cut through all the legal jargon, make a simple video that says, here's what this means for your Saturday night pizza, here's why your local Fatburger is staying open, but even more importantly, mobilize the franchisees.
Get the local owners on camera.
Yes, even better. Let the local owners show business as usual. A high-quality video from the owner of the Fatburger in Manhattan Beach saying, hey, we're here, the grill is hot, we aren't going anywhere, is worth 1,000 corporate memos.
That's really true. It humanizes the bankruptcy. It reminds people that their neighbor owns the shop, not some ticker symbol in Texas. It separates the local business from the corporate failure.
Exactly. You have to sever that mental link. Okay, let's move on to our final segment. We're calling this one The Shift. We've talked tech, finance, food. Now let's talk about the dirt and the docks.
The industrial backbone of the South Bay.
A report came out at midnight from Globist, and there were some updates from CBRE and the Port of Los Angeles. Now, industrial real estate usually puts people to sleep, but this is actually really important context for everything else we've talked about.
It is. For a while now, the big fear in that market has been oversupply. During the pandemic, everyone built warehouses because online shopping went crazy. Then that cooled off and we had all these empty buildings.
But the news today suggests a turn.
It does. The data shows vacancies in the South Bay and court markets are finally plateauing.
Plateauing sounds kind of boring. Why is that good?
In this context, plateauing is excellent news. It means the free fall has stopped. The market is finding a floor. The fear of a crash is fading, and it's shifting toward what they call selective development. We aren't just building to build anymore. We're building for specific needs.
And we're seeing leadership changes reflecting this too.
Right. CBRE appointed Patrick McGrath as the new leader for the South Bay. That signals a fresh strategy. And at the same time, the Port of Los Angeles released a revised environmental impact report for the Terminal Island Maritime Support Facility.
Hey, you just said environmental impact report, and I felt my eyes glaze over. Why should we care about that paperwork?
Because in California, paperwork is power. It's the difference between rhetoric and action. The port's been talking about this build bigger, smarter vision for years. This report means they are moving from talking about it to regulatory action. It creates certainty.
So the benefit here isn't a huge boom like Anduril, but it's the end of the fear.
Exactly. Stability lets businesses plan. You can't hire 5,500 people if you don't know if the supply chain is going to work. This confirms that the supply chain infrastructure is locking in.
And their shipping and logistics specialty pages.
Real estate and logistics are two industries that traditionally just drown in data.
Oh, they really do. Spreadsheets, vacancy rates, square footage, TEUs. It's impenetrable for normal people.
But the insight buried in that data is incredibly valuable.
So imagine you're Patrick McGrath or the team at CBRE. You could host a South Bay Market Outlook panel at Voxel using their Authority Amplifier tool.
Define the narrative of the recovery.
Yes. Don't just send a PDF report to your clients. Sit down, turn on the cameras, and explain why the market is stabilizing. Be the face of the recovery. Explain what finding the floor means for rent prices next year.
And for the logistics folks down in San Pedro.
The Terminal Island expansion is complex. Local maritime businesses could use the studio to discuss the impacts, position themselves as the voice of the local San Pedro market. If you can explain how this environmental report affects the daily flow of containers, you become indispensable to your clients.
You stop being a vendor and start being a partner. It's about taking that complex, boring data and turning it into a story that makes people nod their heads.
Which brings us right back to where we started. It is all about the story. So let's recap this roller coaster of a morning.
It's been a lot. We have Anduril building the future of defense in Long Beach, a massive boom. We have EP Wealth in Torrance, cashing in on a sprint to growth.
We have FAT Brands trying to survive its own debt structure while keeping the grills hot and the franchisees sane. And we have the industrial market finally taking a deep breath and stabilizing after a scary couple of years.
And what stands out to me, looking at all this together, is that economic health isn't one number. It's not just the economy is good or the economy is bad. It is this messy mix of expansion, contraction, and restructuring all happening at the exact same time.
Sometimes on the same street. It's the split screen.
And that brings us to our final thought for you to think about. As we see Space Beach rise, literally building a billion-dollar campus, while traditional fast casual chains stumble and file for bankruptcy.
You have to ask yourself, are we witnessing a fundamental shift in the South Bay's identity?
Right. Are we moving away from a service-based economy and returning to a hard tech and infrastructure stronghold? And if we are, where does that leave the small business owner? Where does that leave the franchisee who isn't building drones?
That is the question to mull over as you drive down Hawthorne Boulevard today. The landscape is changing, and the winners are going to be the ones who can tell their story the best. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Check the show notes for links to all the sources we mentioned, including those voxel strategies, because frankly, everyone needs a strategy right now.
Stay curious.
We'll see you next time.